Have you ever heard of the hardships Filipinos in the Philippines have to face because of their government? If not, then this is the video for you. Hello everyone, my name's Isaac. You might be wondering what I mean by corruption. Corruption is a very broad topic because there's so many forms of it. The main examples and stories of corruption I'll be talking about in this video have police violence, human rights violations, and abuse of power. I am specifically passionate about talking about police violence. As someone who is African American, I notice similarities between the way Filipinos in the Philippines and African Americans like myself have experienced unjust actions from their police. Before talking about the different stories of corruption in the Philippines, I just want to say that I'm not Filipino and I don't speak Tagalog, so if I do say some of the words wrong, I do sincerely apologize. First story I'll be talking about is Imelda Marcos and the Calawit Safari Park controversy. This story starts back in the 70s. This was when then President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, was in rule. Imelda Marcos, who was Ferdinand's wife, was very involved with projects that reflect her obsession with luxury and beauty. Imelda was inspired by safari parks and wanted an exotic experience in the Philippines. Imelda and Ferdinand made ties with Kenya to transfer African wildlife as a conservation effort in 1976. Kenya airlifted over 100 African animals like zebra, water bucks, gazelles, and giraffes onto Calawit Island as a highly publicized event. The Philippines government even tried to accommodate the animals by removing native plants and adding African plant life and modifying the ecosystem. For some, this might sound like a noble endeavor. However, in order to make the safari park, they needed land. The project forced over 250 of the island's indigenous inhabitants, the Tagbanwa tribe. The government relocated them to different parts of Palawan. Families had little time to adapt there, and most of them struggled in the new environment. Their ancestral land was taken over just because the government wanted to. Those who wanted to go back to their homeland were threatened by the military and government restriction. Another layer on this situation was promised economical benefits like job and money made from tourism never made a significant impact on the local population. Years later, dictator Ferdinand Marcos was ousted by the People's Power Revolution in 1986. The Calawit Safari Park suffered without stable support from the government. Despite that, the park is still active, however, funding is still inconsistent. Imagine living with your family one day, and the government tells you to leave and go somewhere else because they want to build a zoo in your home. They didn't even have a choice to leave. They were forced out of their home with no say, which is the worst part in my opinion. Recently, some of the families have returned to their land, but they are still continuing legal battles to this day. After more than 50 years, the Tagbanwa people still fight to reclaim their homeland. Before going on to the next story, I want to share an interview clip from Yezabella. Yezabella is from an organization called Anak Bayan. Anak Bayan is a youth organization based in the Philippines, but they have different sectors in the US. Their goal is to fight off US imperialism, local landlords, monopolistic capitalism, corrupt government officials, and to unite youth from different sectors of society to advance the cause of national democracy. In this clip, I asked Yezabella a time she or someone she knows has been affected by the Philippines government.
During the People's Revolution, which is called the EDSA Revolution, which were a bunch of people, thousands of people around EDSA and Metro Manila. They were protesting against Marcos's corruption. And if you don't know, Marcos was a dictator. He held the martial law for 20 years. And I believe my mom was in middle school or she was like 11 at that time. She was telling me how she had to stay at home, stay in shelter because there was a big protest happening all over, and everyone, like, schools were closed down, and even like Catholics who are considered like very conservative individuals who hold such like conservative beliefs were rallying against the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos.
Hmm.
And I believe that to my mother's like story, even though she wasn't in the protests, like it showcases how like the Philippines was like united. The people were united for once and they wanted to fight against the corruption. that was being pushed onto them, and they wanted to stop it, and they did. It got Marcos to fled away from the Philippines, but even though that happened, um, injustices weren't stopped. They still continue to happen till this day. So, yeah.
The next and final story I'll be talking about is the drug war. This story starts back in 2016. This was when then President of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, took office on June 30th. Shortly after his inauguration, he started a war on drugs. In speeches, Duterte encouraged citizens to kill suspected criminals and drug addicts. If you know any addicts, go ahead and kill them yourself, as in getting their parents to do it would be too painful. Officially, 6,229 people died during the drug war. However, news organizations and human rights groups say the count could be over 12,000 people from the police and vigilantes. The death count didn't just include drug addicts and drug dealers. People that were suspected of being either or were also killed as well. Sometimes people forget that just because someone is suspected of something doesn't mean that they 100% did the crime. Some of the suspects were even children. Now that I explained a little bit about the drug war, I want to share some of the stories of the people who unrightly died during it. This section of the video might be difficult for some to watch. If at any point in this section you need to skip the video, I will put timestamps on the screen. The first person I'll be talking about is named Rogi Sebastian. Sebastian, who was 23 at the time, lived with his wife and kids in a house owned by a drug dealer in Bernardo. Sebastian worked as a pedicab driver and was also a habitual drug user. According to a relative interviewed by Human Rights Watch, the drug dealer used Sebastian to pick up and deliver drugs, but after Duterte was elected, Sebastian stopped using and delivering drugs, not wanting to be harmed or killed. On September 6, 2016, a watchman from their barangay told Sebastian to go to the chairman. The chairman told Sebastian to go surrender to the police as a drug user and offered to go with him to the station. Sebastian refused. He had explained to the chairman how he had quit drugs months prior and how he had to provide for his family. Police constantly monitored their house because they had a warrant on the drug dealer. On September 19th, at about 1 p.m., a plain-clothed police officer asked for the owner's whereabouts, but Sebastian's wife did not know the whereabouts and denied any knowledge. On the same day, at about 3:30 p.m., 3 masked armed men in bulletproof vests and gloves entered the home. One guarded the door while the other 2 woke up the couple and handcuffed Sebastian. The 2 gunmen pulled out a list of drug suspects, and on the list was Sebastian's name. Sebastian pleaded to say goodbye and hug his family because he thought he was going to be killed, but the 2 gunmen refused to let him. A relative said, "I could hear Rogi begging for his life outside of the room. We were crying, and the other armed man threatened to kill us as well. I told him, go ahead, then we'll all be in heaven together. Then I heard 3 more gunshots. Then I passed out and lost consciousness." A neighbor who saw the altercation go down told Human Rights Watch that the 3 armed men left the house without being stopped by uniformed officers who were securing the building. In the police report, it was acknowledged that the police carried out the shooting. The next person I'll be talking about is named Hearts de Chavez. De Chavez was a 26-year-old trans woman. She previously worked as a beautician, but had to resort to drug dealing to help feed her family. Relatives pleaded for her to stop selling drugs, but she felt like there was no other option. She continued to sell drugs, telling her mother this was to buy food. On January 7th, 2017, De Chavez was detained after leaving a friend's house. No drugs were found on her, but the officer found incriminating evidence on her phone about drug dealings. The police demanded a bribe from De Chavez's relatives to release her. 3 days later, at roughly 10 p.m., De Chavez came home for the evening. At 11:30 p.m., 7 armed masked men in civilian clothing broke into the house and took De Chavez. A relative said that De Chavez was pleading for the men not to harm her. The men pointed guns at the family and left with De Chavez. The 7 gunmen took her 50 meters down the alley, A witness to the crime told Human Rights Watch that the gunman told everyone to leave before shooting DeChavez. The gunman shot DeChavez in the head and chest. The 7 gunmen fled the scene immediately. As DeChavez's family left their home in search for her, they came across the gunmen as they were heading back to their motorcycles outside of the alley. The relatives said that they were laughing about killing DeChavez. The 7 gunmen appeared to be unconcerned about being caught by the police, even though there was a heavy police presence in the area, indicating that they were either working with the police or police themselves. Despite that, the police report doesn't say and take note of the gunmen taking DeChavez, only stating that the body was reported by local officials. For this last person, I am going to give a content warning. Even though I gave one in the beginning, this specific story might be hard to hear, but I feel like it's very important to show what happened during the drug war. I couldn't find much information about them, so this one's going to be a little short. On August the 23rd, 2016, a 5-year-old named Danica Mae Garcia was tragically killed by a stray bullet from an unidentified man on a motorcycle during an anti-drug operation. The gunman was trying to shoot Danica's 52-year-old grandfather while they were at their home. The bullet sadly struck her while she was getting ready for school. A man aboard a motorcycle went after my grandfather, but sadly he shot my niece. Danica's grandfather survived the shooting, but sadly she was declared dead at the hospital. Danica was enrolled as a kinderpupil at East Central Integrated School. Her teacher described her as a very inquisitive child. Danica's dream was to become a teacher. I chose to talk about these people because I personally felt like their stories embodied the horrific nature of the drug war. The most heartbreaking story for me was Danica's. Danica was so young and could have had a bright future as a teacher, but she couldn't achieve her goal because of her tragic death. This is the sad reality in the Philippines, where more than 120 children were killed during the drug war. DeChavez and Sebastian's deaths were also really saddening. DeChavez only sold drugs to feed her family, and Sebastian stopped using them and helping sell drugs when Duterte was elected. Both were meticulously and maliciously killed instead of being detained. Sebastian even begged to hug and tell his family goodbye, but got denied. On this year, March 11th, the Philippines authorities arrested Rodrigo Duterte for crimes against humanity related to the drug war. This was not a war on drugs. It was a war on the poor and unprivileged, as almost 12,000 of the deaths were in poor communities. I want to share a quote from Rodrigo Duterte. I feel like this quote is important because it shows how much blood and violence he was willing to spill over this. Hitler had massacred 3 million Jews. Now there's 3 million drug addicts. I'd be happy to slaughter them. If Germany had Hitler, the Philippines would have me. In this video, I talk about Imelda Marcos in the Calauit Safari Park, Rodrigo Duterte, the drug war, and the casualties. I think it's very important to share stories like these. A lot of people in the Philippines who experience corruption like this want to share their stories and make themselves heard, but most of them can't due to fear of the government or threats from it. It's not just the Philippines either. Many people in different countries also experience hardships and tragedy from their government and can't speak up. I am so thankful to be in the position I am right now. I'm surrounded by people that truly care for me and have resources that others might not have. But I also understand that people might not have that type of support. It feels so good to be able to give others a platform to share their stories and give them a voice. You, the viewer, also have a voice. No matter how big or small you think it is, it matters. Whether you protest, share resources or stories, you're making a contribution to a more peaceful and more equal world. Before ending the video, I want to share another clip from another person that I interviewed. They want to keep their name anonymous, so out of respect, I blurred their name out in the clip. In this clip, I asked them ways that people can show support.
Just take part of organizations, like be part of organizations, like, plug Anak Bayan. just plugging the organizations, Filipino organizations around you. If you want to take action, I feel like you have to really contribute your time, your effort, make your voice heard, speak about it to your classmates, your parents, your family, of course in your own terms too. Like, it's for your safety. Know your limits as well. Take classes, take like classes that talk about community. I think that's the really best way to like be included with people around you.
I highly encourage you after this video to look at Anik Bayan's site. I'm putting Anik Bayan's site in the description and other interesting articles that I found but didn't use in this video. All the research I gathered and used in this video will also be put in the description. I truly thank you all for taking your time and watching this video, and remember, your voice matters.